information in genetic biocontrol technologies and the life sciences. Then we move to webinar 2, which is focused on trust by design, communicating emerging technologies with confidence. Then webinar 3, we tackled truth under the microscope, checking claims and clarifying science for various audiences. So today, we are tackling reporting the science right, covering emerging technologies responsibly. How do we cover emerging technologies responsibly? So the central theme of the Truth Under the Microscope series is trust, which is fundamental to scientific progress and innovation. Today's information environment enables rapid dissemination. We can put the slides on. Spread of information and disinformation, especially in the age of artificial intelligence. So the question is, how do journalists tell the truth about emerging technology when evidence is incomplete, when the stakes are high and the hype is everywhere? That's the sort of conversation that we want to have today. So this is a 2-hour webinar, and it aims at equipping participants with practical tools for technologies, choosing appropriate expert sources, communicating uncertainty, explaining risks and benefits in ways that are accurate, inclusive, and useful to the public. So the session will combine our expert panel, which we will be introducing in a moment. And we hope that we will be engaged and will be able to ask questions. So the objectives of this webinar for today: reporting the science right, covering emerging technologies responsibly. By the end of the webinar, participants will be better able to report on emerging technologies accurately, in context, in public interest. So we also want to be able to distinguish evidence-based science reporting from speculation, promotion, misinformation, and hype. We would like to apply ethical principles in reporting that address equity, privacy, safety, and unintended consequences. In addition, we would like to be able to interview scientists, technologists, policymakers, and affected communities and independent experts effectively, as well as explaining scientific uncertainty, limitations, risks, and benefits, and most importantly, addressing the use of technology and AI-assisted tools responsibly while upholding editorial independence, transparency, and verification standards. So, by the end of the webinar, we would like the participants to be able to recognize hype, misinformation, and supported claims, ask the right questions about technology and its impact, apply an ethical and public interest lens, learn the new technologies, the emerging technologies from our expert panelists, and interview beyond the usual experts. We would also like the participants to be able to communicate uncertainty without creating confusion, and eventually use AI and digital tools without compromising journalists. So this conversation is important right now, covering emerging technologies responsibly, because artificial intelligence and biotechnology, from climate change to digital health, these are technologies that are rapidly developing and often generate excitement, uncertainty, and speculation. And journalists play a critical role in helping the public to understand them. So we would like that from this conversation, that we are able to know or to understand that technology can shape public decisions. Technology can be the difference, or the sort of information relayed on our platforms can be the difference between a community understanding and misunderstanding the sort of technology that was implied. This technology is also important because the gap between innovation and evidence can be wide. We want to widen that gap and be able to enable participants to understand technologies, right? Journalism needs to distinguish what has been demonstrated from what has been promised to what is already released in the market. And we hope that our panelists will be able to speak to these issues. This conversation is also important because hype can easily become misinformation. Sensational headlines, exaggerated claims, cherry-picked studies, or corporate promotion can make emerging technologies appear more advanced or transformative than the evidence can support. Uncertainty is part of science, and therefore responsible reporting should not hide uncertainty, but explain it. Audiences need to understand the difference between we are not yet there, or we don't know yet, or there is emerging evidence, or the evidence shows this. So we'd like to be able to understand that responsible reporting should be able to distinguish those various stages. And the consequences are not equally distributed. Technology can create opportunities, but also introduce risks. How do we reduce those risks while communicating to the public? So these tools, that is the AI and digital tools, can improve research, but they can also introduce errors, bias, questions about transparency. That's why we would like to be able to learn how to report responsibly on the emerging technologies. And finally, public trust depends on getting the science right. So when we can accurately explain the evidence, limitations, or the uncertainty, then the audiences will be able to make informed decisions rather than just amplifying technologies because of excitement. And that's why we are doing the webinar today, which is reporting the science right and covering emerging technologies. So this is a production of the African Genetic Biocontrol Consortium, the Biotrust Institute, in collaboration with the Elizabeth R. Griffin Foundation at the Johns Hopkins University. And we would like journalists to be able to tell the truth about emerging technologies when evidence is complete, when the stakes are high, and also when hype is everywhere. How do we report responsibly? Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished panelists, welcome to the fourth webinar in the series, Truth Under the Microscope. And right now, I'd like to hand you over to our moderators of the day, Professor Kofi Boni and Dr. Florida Maritim. Welcome. Professor Kofi, I'd like to hand you. Kofi and Maritim, please welcome on board. So that's Dr. Florida Maritim. She leads strategic communications and stakeholder engagement at the Kenya Agricultural, Livestock and Research Organization, CARLO, formerly CARI, where she leads translating agricultural research into policy, partnerships, and practical impact. And her work focuses on strengthening partnerships and using evidence-based communication to accelerate agricultural transformation across Kenya and the region. Welcome, Dr. Florida Maritim, and also welcome, Professor Kofi Boni, who is an associate professor and the head of Department of Virology at the Noguchi Memorial Institute of Medical Research at the University of Ghana. His expertise ranges from emerging and re-emerging infections, infectious diseases, including arboviruses, and viral hemorrhagic fevers, such as Ebola and Lassa fever. Over to you.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone, and good morning. I'll just ask my counterpart, Etienne, to take over from here so that I can be taking the notes. And welcome all to this very important webinar. And I think this will be another opportunity for all of us to really brainstorm and see what value do we have in this conversation going forward. Thank you. Rosalia, is my counterpart there?
All right, coffee. We don't seem to have coffee on board. So I think, Dr. Florida, you can proceed to introduce Alex Atuhaire, who is our keynote speaker of the day.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. Let me just proceed to introduce our key speaker or keynote speaker today, Alex. He is a senior Ugandan journalist, editor, and media trainer with extensive experience in media or newsroom management, content development, media and communication training. He has over 20 years of journalism, reporting, and editing experience. He previously worked for the Nation Media Group in Uganda, Tanzania, and Kenya in several newsroom roles, rising to be the news editor and associate editor of the Daily Monitor newspaper in Uganda, before moving on into the training and media consultancy. He runs two media platforms, that is pmdaily.com as an editorial director and techmna.com as publisher. Currently, Alex has staff in the Faculty of Humanities and Social Science, Department of Journalism and Media Studies at Victoria University, Kampala, and specializes in teaching practice modules, including communication skills, investigative journalism, among other trainings. He also holds an MA in Media Leadership and Innovation from Aga Khan University, Nairobi, and a postgraduate qualification in mass communication from the University of Leicester, UK, and has attended specialized advanced media practice training at Fojo Media Institute. And that is in the USA also. He has done quite a number of write-ups. His research interests span the areas of new media business models, content generation models, media sustainability, media regulation, and political communications. And just to say a few of his experience and much to do, I just want to welcome him to do for us a keynote speak for 20 minutes, and his 20 minutes starts now. Welcome. For anyone who doesn't understand or does not understand English or the French, you can always find the interpretation from a chat so that you can be able to understand whatever is going on. But our colleague here is going to speak in English, so for the francophone, you will always be listening in French.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Florida, for that kind introduction, and I am absolutely privileged and exceedingly humbled to be here, representing to the scientists and all the other members of the media fraternity about this important subject of reporting the science right. I am not a doctor, so but I'm going to speak from my heart as a person who has more than 20 years of field and this work in journalism. I will use examples that I have experienced, and I don't know if you are able to see my presentation. Able to see my presentation. I'll speak to my presentation, and that's me. I have been introduced. And I'll speak to the follow, my talking points will be generated around the following talking points. Number one, what are the editorial best practices? When we say reporting the science right and covering emerging technologies responsible, what are the editorial best practices of verifying, especially scientific claims? Number two, I'll speak about how do we build and assess evidence quality and select credible sources, because science in our newsrooms and our newsroom settings is a subject topic, and to report it, you need to have generated a lot of expert skill, because what you are, as I'm going to be presenting later, what you report affects the public in very many ways. Then I'll also speak about how do we avoid sensationalism, or as the planners of the webinar put it, how do you avoid modeling, reporting something that is out of context, and explain uncertainty in a way that benefits the public. I also speak about how do we use technology, especially AI, responsibly, and produce accurate, reliable, and accessible stories for the public that we serve. And then I will do the takeaways, and I hope I'm able to do this in 20 minutes. I'm now remaining with 18. So let's roll. Number one, science information is an important information because it is always functional information for the public. Science information is important because it is always functional information for the public. Every science writer must note that understanding, sourcing, reporting reliable science information is so critical to the public, because the communities we serve must receive accurate, actionable, and trustworthy stories, not only in science, but also on other topics. But there is a red flag. Because of the digital migration and other things that are a challenge in the media ecosystem, these days science information is coming from very many sources. I will point out a platform like TikTok. There is a lot of experts speaking about anything, any topic, speaking about the science they may not understand. So this information these days is coming from very many sources.
Alex,
Yes.
just a minute. Are you able to put your slides in presentation mode so that all of us can be able to see properly?
I tried to share here. I don't know why it is not.
Just put them in presentation mode.
Participants can now see your screen. Are you able to see now? Are you able to see my slides?
Not yet. From there, can you be able to click? There is something I wanted someone to show you so that when you are on presentation mode, just open your slides, the way you had opened it.
Yes.
And then from there is something like a glass there. I don't know whether you can be able to see this. The next one. No, where you are. Where you are, just ahead.
Here.
Yes,
Here.
just there is the last one, the last icon in the same, the last icon.
Slideshow.
Yes, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Can you click it there?
I clicked.
Yeah, thank you. You can proceed.
You are able to see it now. Eh?
Yes.
Okay. So I am saying that this red flag is, sorry, I've lost a minute there, but I hope you will be able to add it to me. I am saying that science information comes from very many sources, but not all the sources are equally reliable. So inaccurate reporting normally catches up with us there and can mislead the public, distort policy formulations or policy pronouncements, distort expectations and erode trust. So our role as specialist reporters, and in this case science journalists, is translate technical data into stories that the public can understand, relate to, and act upon. How do we do it? We need to go back to the basics. We need to go back to the basics and go back to our understand our verification practices. Why do we emphasize verification? Why do we emphasize verification? Not only for science reporting or reporting covering emerging technologies responsibly, but for everything, because accuracy matters. Number one, reliable reporting safeguards livelihoods, and in this case, in terms of science information, prevents misinformation and strengthens public trust. This is also something that really supports media sustainability, if you are to look at it in a business angle. Some of the verification practices we need to apply when dealing with science information is cross-checking emerging research, science trends, consulting experts, and transparently reporting uncertainties. And from there, and I'm going to speak about some of the verification, fact-checking best practices when we are dealing with science information. Number one is to develop a culture of fact-checking claims and new science initiatives. How do we do this? We need to track the numbers, emerging targets, and looking at all these emerging issues against official sources. And number two is to verify, especially with social media, and digital spread. We need to verify visuals and social media content. We can use tools like reverse image search, metadata checks, to be able to make sure that what we are dealing with is credible information. Number three is that we can counter information with people-centered stories. People-centered stories is something that is of a challenge these days because of a lot of use of technology. We have kind of undermined the human voices. We need to connect this verifiable data to real-life impacts or community voices that can really make these stories credible. Then another thing is that we can build trust and accountability through accurate ethical reporting. There's a case study, for example, in Uganda, there is uncertainty about mosquito around Jenny-Drive mosquitoes in Uganda. When you look at that slide of mine, you see that screaming headlines. That screaming headline is on another unrelated subject, but you see it was one of the dailies, and says somebody reported officials used rats to eat COVID cash. Officials used rats, and there was a story that really was reported in another context and undermined the science behind those Jenny moderated rats that were being used to generate a COVID vaccine. So how do we report uncertainty around Jenny, for example, Jenny-Drive mosquitoes in Uganda? Number one is that we need to be able to verify the evidence How do you verify the evidence? You need to be very, very confident about the research stage, approvals, claims that can come with it, and uncertainties using primary evidence and independent experts. And in the next slide, I'm going to be looking at how do we get these kinds of voices? How do we get these kinds of credible voices? Then number two is that you need to report in the public interest. The first cardinal role of journalism actually is to act in public interest. So you need to avoid hype and alarmism while examining ethical, ecological, regulatory, equity, and community implications. And then number three, you need to communicate responsibly. You need to explain explanatory journalism, the risks, the benefits, the limitations, and the trade-offs clearly, and verify any digital or AI-assisted reporting. AI and technology are not a bad thing. AI and technology are not a bad thing. Before I go to AI, I needed to speak about where and how do we get reliable and how do we source and get reliable science information? Number one, how do we use national institutional sources? Some of these sources are government agencies, but we normally overlook them. For example, these agencies provide policy forecasts, scientific models, and policy shifts and important updates that you can then use as your primary data. Then there is national scientific sources, and these include universities, research institutions. There is a very good institution in Uganda, for example, called NARO, the National Research Institute, NARO. They normally do a lot of research on these emerging science and technologies, but how often do we use them? And I believe that also these institutions are spread across the region. Every country has this kind of institution. Then there are universities like Makerere University, the University of Nairobi, the University of Dar es Salaam, the University of Ghana, and very many other universities. For myself, I teach at Victoria University, and most of the guys there are doing research that you can use as your primary source. So these institutions can help you produce evidence-based knowledge. Then, of course, there are regional sources, organizations that offer cross-border data that can help you to contextualize these issues in the eyes of the region. Then there are international sources. There is institutions like the World Health Organization. And when we talk about biotechnology, there is FAO that provides authoritative global voices. Then lastly, we need to go back to the communities. When we get voices from communities, this helps us translate technical data into stories that communities can understand, relate to, and act upon. AI, technology, and reporting technology responsibly. We have had this conversation continuously, and we have said that we need, as journalists and editors, we need to continuously prepare our newsrooms, understand technology landscape, and be part of it, because when digital migration started, there was a tendency in the newsrooms for us to just look on as technology took over the ecosystem. But we need to build capacity of journalists and editors, and this will empower us ourselves, especially on key fact-checking skills and countering misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation online. Number 3 is that technology helps us to involve the audiences in generating, in producing, and in sharing the stories. Journalists using AI-powered tools have described treating technology as a personal assistant and are aware of the pros and cons, or aware of the challenges that come with technology. So AI is here with us. It comes with some challenges, but also there's a lot of opportunities. How can we use AI and other technologies in a responsible manner? We must learn that we must learn lessons from when social media came. That we must really switch on a collaborative mode with these technologies without over-depending on them. So in the era of AI, human connection still matter, whether it is having the editor in the loop, sharing ideas in person, or having analysis from experts to do reporting. So that is why we need to adopt AI in our newsrooms and be ahead of the curve. We need to make sure that our AI literacy newsroom is at the top. But there is a red flag there. AI comes with challenges for ethics and integrity, and we must make this central to the use of AI in journalism and highlight the truth and retain trust. From the Kelly Tidwell of the Fight Youth Network says that every community deserves technology that tells their truth, protects their future. So AI is here with us, and we must make sure that we use it in a manner that is responsible. How is AI useful? AI is useful in very many ways. It is used. We can use it in our content gathering. For example, in preparation of content, we can use AI tools. We can use AI tools in content production and content discovery. Then we can use AI tools in news production, including structuring copy, helping us to structure workflow, and helping us with verification. And also, we use AI in news. There are so many tools that we can share that you can use that can help you to embed AI in your news, in your work, in terms of news gathering, news production, and news distribution, including content marketing, personalization, and addition. But we must always keep at the back of our mind that AI comes with ethical risks. And what do we need to do to ensure that those ethical risks do not cause issues? Number one is that we must use AI to enhance our journalism and not to replace it. So AI
Alex,
is a
you have
research
1 minute.
assistant.
Alex, you
Yes.
have 1 minute.
Yes, give me 1 more minute. I will finish. Number two is that we must acknowledge and plan any piece of content that has AI involvement accordingly. Number three is that we must ensure accuracy, reliability, use of authoritative, trusted data sets, and develop own AI technologies to further enhance the quality and accuracy of content output. Number four is that we must continue to employ human intervention on all content prior to publication. And we must also understand that AI can work in tandem with the journalists, helping free us from some of the routine tasks, produce more insightful, original, investigative, and engaging content. Finally, the takeaways from my take on this subject is number one, is that we must always verify before publishing. Number two is that we must always separate evidence from hype. How do we do this? We distinguished established findings from speculation, promotion, modeling, and unsupported conclusions. Number 3 is that we must explain uncertainty clearly. State parties known, unknown, limited, or still being tested, and together with the risks, benefits, and trade-offs. Number 4 is that we must use diverse sources. That is a cardinal rule in journalism. Include scientists, regulators, independent specialists, and affected communities. Provide a proper context of what we are reporting. And number 5 is that we must report in public interest, which is also a cardinal role of what journalism is supposed to do. Consider equity, safety, privacy, human rights of whoever you are dealing with, inclusion, and possible unintended consequences. Lastly, let's use AI responsibly. How do we do this? Treat AI output as an assistant, not a verified fact. Protect confidential information. Disclose material that has been used by being generated by AI, and retain human editorial control. Thank you very much. Back to you, Dr. Florida. That's my take on this subject.
Thank you so much, Alex. I'm not sure whether we should clap or we should, as in, which way do we go for when we are doing the online clapping? But anyway, you can just do something on the chat there, give you a comment on the chat, give you a question on the chat, give you a comment on the chat, comment everything that you really feel like you want to give about the presentation. But you have done well, Alex. You are on time. And you really discussed the matter in a very wider perspective. Given that we have a very little time, I'll just give you what, in a nutshell, what Alex has presented. He has demonstrated very well on the practical methods of verifying scientific and technology claims. He has explained how to assess evidence, quality, select credibility, and independent sources. He has shown how to identify and even how we can manage facts, how you can always verify your facts or check fact checking. He has also done well on the AI. He has really elaborated very well on the AI. But for the other members of the team that is listening, you are free to present also one of your comments, your takeaway at the chat, so that we can always pick the takeaway from Alex. And if you have any other comment, I'm just giving you just 1 minute so that you can give your comments or observation in a verbal way before we go to the next presenter. If there is, maybe people are still I don't know. I cannot see any comment from the team here online. What I just want to do is just to proceed to the next presenter. As you what we say, we are still thinking whether to ask Alex or whether to continue listening, so that we can all of us discuss at the end of the discussion, because the topics are almost close to each other. So our next speaker will be Etienne Bilgo. I know you are very ready to present. Just to give a brief about Etienne Bilgo, is a doctor, is an associate research professor at the Joint Parasitology and Medical Entomology Laboratory of the Institute of Science and Center Muraz, Burkina Faso, in Burkina Faso. His research focuses on developing innovative microbial biotechnologies for the control of mosquito-borne diseases, particularly malaria and dengue, with expertise spanning based interventions and fungi. He has over 40 international conferences. He has attended over 40 international conferences and made presentations, received 23 international fellowships and awards, and was recognized as Burkina Faso's best early and mid-career researcher under 40 years in 2020. He has also received a prestigious 2020 AAS Decomp Cleover Prize for a landmark publication in science, and has supervised and mentored 27 students across undergraduate, master's, and doctorate levels. His current work extends beyond technology development to address the biosafety, risk assessment, regulatory, and community engagement aspects of emerging endos-based approaches, including Wolbachia, with the goal of supporting the safe and evidence-based implementation of innovative vector control across Africa. With that introduction, it is showing that he has really done quite a lot in the field of science. And today it is an opportunity for us to really listen to him and understand the kind of research that he has been undertaking. And for us in the communications, I think this is an opportunity to interact with the real science from the other side of the country, especially I know most of the people here are East African team. Let's listen to him from Burkina Faso. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for this nice presentation of myself. So I don't know if I can share my screen. Okay.
Yes, you can. Yes, you can. You had even shared before. Please share again.
Okay. I think it's okay now. Can you see my screen?
Yes, you can proceed.
So, but I have an issue to move. Okay. Yes. Okay. Thank you very much. So, I have 10 minutes to present one of, I can say one of the emerging technology, which is really going to be one of the game changer when we are talking about vector control, specifically dengue and other arboviruses. So my presentation is going to be really focused on Wolbachia. The name is Wolbachia of this microbe. So what I'm going to cover is going to be what we know on Wolbachia, what we don't know, and how this technology can be compared with other vector control strategies. So I will not take a lot of time about the epidemiology of vector-borne diseases. Most of us in Africa, we are suffering from malaria, and now we are facing to dengue, which is one of the emerging vector-borne disease now. For example, if you take the case of Burkina in 2023, we were facing to our worst outbreak of dengue with more than 700 deaths and 70,000 cases. And what I want to bring to your attention here, this is due to the failure of the common tools that we are currently using, like insecticide, resistance of mosquito to insecticide, but also we are starting to see resistance of parasite, viruses to different drugs that we are using to treat this disease. And one important point that we need to keep in mind, and I made even an opinion paper in 2023 on this, no matter the amount of money that we are going to put, if we want to use only the current tools, we will not be able to make a lot of progress in terms of saving life. So we need new tools. We need complementary tools. So this is one of the key points that I want all of us to keep in mind. So when we are talking about promising vector control tools, you need to have this an idea on how vector-borne diseases are working. You have the systemic component. You have the virus or the parasite of malaria, the virus of dengue.
I'm not sure whether I'm the only one who is not hearing properly. It keeps on breaking.
To human, which is who is the component. And then you have the environment. If you want to control a disease, you
I'm not sure whether we are hearing him anymore. Yeah? I cannot hear.
hello?
Yeah, you are disappearing. Eh? You are breaking.
Hola, I think it's my internet.
Yeah, we can hear
So,
you now.
okay, I don't know where you lost me.
The last slide. The last slide.
This one
The
or
one.
this one? This one?
I don't think where the slides are moving. Eh?
Yeah, the slides are moving from my side. Maybe let's
The interpreter. Yeah, I can see the interpreter on the screen. Eh? Francophone interpreter.
okay,
I think you have.
let's maybe stop sharing and then share again. Okay, can you see the slide now?
Yes, you can proceed now, but put it on the slide. Yes, thank you. Proceed.
Okay, okay. I was saying that if you want to, in terms of innovative vector control, you need to have in head the four systemic component, the parasite or the virus, which is the pathogen. And then you have the vector, which is transmitting the mosquito, which is transmitting the pathogen, the parasite to human. Human is the third human or animal. They are another component of among the four systemic component. Then you have environment. So if you want to bring new solution, you need to come with strategies that can cut the links between those four components. For example, you can cut the link between mosquitoes and the virus or the parasite by cutting the link between them. Here it's gonna be to kill the mosquitoes or to block the development of the parasite or the virus within mosquitoes. It's the same between the link between the vector and the human. If you want to do that, you can use insecticide to kill mosquitoes or treating people to avoid them, to avoid mosquitoes to reach them. And then you have the environment. For example, you can do sanitation, cleaning the environment, breeding site, also management and sanitation in order to avoid water. This is different component. So in terms of innovative vector control tool, you need to bring a solution which can be complementary to the existing solution, but also as much as possible, you are bringing solution together, your strategy becoming really stronger in terms of vector control tools. This is a point that I want also to bring to the attention of the panelists. So, for example, in Burkina, we have set up a center of excellence based on innovative vector control tools. And in the past 6 years, we have trained around 50 PhD and more than 150 master on this innovative vector-borne disease, innovative solution biotechnologies to control vector-borne diseases. So let's focus on Wolbachia, which is one of the really emerging vector-borne disease solution that I want to talk today. What is Wolbachia? Wolbachia is a bacteria. It's a gram-negative bacteria. It's intracellular. That means Wolbachia cannot develop outside of its host tissue. This is the meaning of intracellular. And Wolbachia, you can find Wolbachia everywhere. For example, if you go outside of your room and you pick up some insects, you can see that if you take 100 of insects, you will find 60% of them which has Wolbachia. And how Wolbachia is working, for example, within mosquitoes. Wolbachia is manipulating the reproduction of its host. For example, if a mosquito has Wolbachia, a female mosquito has Wolbachia, some strains of Wolbachia, it cannot have progeny. His eggs are dying when he is mating. For example, another important feature of Wolbachia is, for example, if a female mosquito has Wolbachia, it cannot transmit dengue or other arboviruses to human or to another us. So Wolbachia can be used also for replacement strategy or for suppression. So the name Wolbachia, just for our knowledge, the name Wolbachia is given to this bacteria to honor the first guys who works on Wolbachia, and his name was Bert Wolbach. And you can see that Wolbachia was discovered more than a century ago now. So how Wolbachia is working. This is a really important slide that I want us to pay attention. For example, all of the mosquitoes here in blue in this slide are mosquitoes which has Wolbachia, and the other ones are wild mosquitoes. For example, if a female and a male, wild male, they are mating, offspring, they have progeny, these are mosquitoes that can transmit dengue. For example, if you take the second line here, if a wild female is mating with a male which has Wolbachia here in blue, you can see here the offspring, we have egg die. That means when a male has Wolbachia and is mating with wild female, the female cannot produce eggs. Or they are producing eggs, but the eggs are dying. That means you can use this strategy, releasing males of Wolbachia, to suppress wild mosquitoes population. Also, if you have the other scenario, if a female and male has Wolbachia, the offspring all has Wolbachia. And you need to keep in mind that I was saying in the previous slide that mosquitoes which has Wolbachia are really important because they are not transmitting disease as well. So in terms of the review in the literature, Wolbachia can work.
Well, Prof.
Hello?
Prof, you have 2 minutes, eh?
Okay. Wolbachia can be used also as a the same strategy with GM mosquitoes or other SIT. So what you need to have in mind, for example, in terms of ethics, biosafety, and social consideration, Wolbachia is not, if a Wolbachia has mosquitoes, it cannot transmit this Wolbachia to human by biting human. Wolbachia is really safe. And also, Wolbachia is inside the tissue of its host. That means you cannot see Wolbachia freely in the air or in the soil. And Wolbachia is not also a GMO because we can find them naturally in the nature. So in comparison with other strategies, for example, Wolbachia, what is really good with Wolbachia, if you want to use them like for replacement, it can be potentially, it can be self-sustainable. But we are still here, when we are talking about Wolbachia, we are still, we have evidence that is working very well in some countries where we are using Wolbachia. And also, Wolbachia we are seeing now some epidemiological evidence of the impact of Wolbachia in terms of saving lives, which is not the case of other promising tools like SIT, like GeneDrive, which is still under laboratory, primary research in the laboratory. So I can say that currently we have around 50 countries in the world we are implementing Wolbachia program, and we have more than 16 million of people living under the protection of Wolbachia, and we have major Wolbachia program in Indonesia, in Brazil, in Australia, and also in Malaysia. This is, for example, one of the picture of our visit in Malaysia in June 2024, where the box that you are seeing here are mosquitoes that we were planning to release there. So what is known, what remain, what still to learn? Wolbachia can be stably, well, the current study shows clearly that Wolbachia can be introduced in Aedes population. And several studies have shown also that Wolbachia can inhibit dengue virus. And we have strong evidence of the existence of different settings. And we have deployment in several countries, as I was saying in the previous slide. What we are still learning, that doesn't mean that the technology is not working, but this is like gaps, research question that we are currently learning in terms of the evidence across different settings. For example, in Africa, we don't have any Wolbachia program so yet in the field. And also, what can be the interaction between the impact of the temperature on Wolbachia densities, transmission, and its capacity to block the dengue virus. And we have also, we need really to have an idea in terms of the impact in terms of long-term operational costs and requirement when we want to implement Wolbachia. As I was saying, this is question that we are still learning, but doesn't mean that the technology is not working. So in Africa, for example, we have
the time is over.
Okay.
We have run out of time.
In Africa, we have several programs. For example, we have the program World Block currently in Burkina, where we are trying to develop a Wolbachia program to release Wolbachia mosquitoes in order to control dengue. Thank you very much. Sorry, I think that I got a lot of issue with internet. Yeah, thank you.
It's okay. Thank you so much. Thank you. We can clap for him in your own way. I think he has really presented science very well. And I know this is a field where most of us have interest in it. And I know the journalists here on the platform might want to really know more about it. And I know you'll get into communication with him so that you can get the full story. But more than anything else, I know this presentation will be shared so that it can be shared to participants in maybe summarized ways so that they can really understand the science behind the vector control. Without taking much time, I know the discussion and comments will be at the end, but in the meantime, the chat is open for all of us to really give your comments. I've seen the first presenter's comment has already been shared. The first presenter will be preparing the response. This second presenter, I think also, his questions could be there, and you are free to write your questions and you'll be responded accordingly so that we can save on time. But main discussion will come at the end. Our second presenter is Bakara Diko. I don't know whether you are around. Bakara Diko, are you in? We are in. Maybe you can prepare your presentation. Bakara Diko, are you in? Bakara Diko?
Dr. Maritim,
Yes, Rosalia.
the presenter is Eric Korir.
Okay.
Yes, so let's have Eric Korir's bio on display. Yeah, so you can proceed.
Rosalia, Eric Korir's bio. Eric Korir is one of our biosafety officers. He's called Mr. Eric Korir. He's a principal biosafety officer at Kenya's National Biosafety Authority with over 13 years of experience.
You're waiting for the screen.
Yes, it is on. He has coordinated national and county level biosafety programs and initiatives supporting the Cartagena Protocol and biosafety. His expertise includes biotechnology regulation, biodiversity, environmental monitoring, and science communication with focus on promoting safe, evidence-based applications of modern biotechnology in Kenya and Africa. Korir, you have 10 minutes to present. Please share your screen, your presentation on the screen. You can drop the team at the. Okay, thank you. Korir, you can share your screen.
Thank you, Dr. Florida, and thank you, colleagues, for this webinar and for having me in this webinar. As I've been introduced by Dr. Martin, my name is Eric Korir. I'm the Principal Biosafety Officer, International Biosafety Authority, Kenya. And my presentation this afternoon is will focus on the issues of public interest considerations. What we are doing these field trials, and we will touch on briefly on governance, the issues of privacy, accountability, the issues of inclusion, and community participation.
Korir, you might want to put your slides on presentation mode. Korir. Korir, you are breaking, yeah? Korir, you are breaking a bit.
Yeah, from my end, it is in presentation mode. Yes, can you now?
Okay.
Hello?
It is now okay. Where it is now is okay. Yeah, we can now hear you well. Proceed.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I'm going to focus on biosafety governance. And I will largely talk about the Kenyan biosafety governance framework. Briefly, is that Kenya's biosafety governance system was established under the Biosafety Act of 2009, which created the National Biosafety Authority, which is responsible for considering and determining applications involving genetically modified organisms. In terms of research and at the institutional levels, these are research institutions that carry out research, that these institutions undertaking contained activities of research must establish what we refer to as Institutional Biosafety Committee, or IBCs. What's the role of these IBCs? That the IBCs prepare content use application and refers them to the authority for approval. The IBC advises the institutions on biosafety matters, supports appropriate risk assessment and risk management mechanisms, and also reviews the suitability of physical containment and control procedures. The IBC also advises the institution and the principal investigators on areas or accident mitigation measures. Now, we need to know that the IBC is therefore the first institutional governance checkpoint, but it does not replace NBA or the regulatory approval. What happens at NBA? That when NBA receives an application, NBA carries or screens the application, it undertakes risk assessment and audits the risk assessment reports supplied by the applicant. NBA also will consult relevant regulatory agencies for their comments regarding the application. And where applicable, it can or it conducts public participation. So NBA's approval comes with conditions. So if NBA can approve that project or application and issue conditions, it can as well reject the application or even request further information. So for journalists, distinguish clearly between institutional review by the IBC and its statutory approval by NBA. And the journalist should ask whether IBC reviewed the proposal, what containment and monitoring arrangements is recommended. And they should also ask what NBA approved and how compliance is being verified. In that slide, just focusing the central point is very simple. That the technical promise does not remove public responsibility. That means that as much as we do whatever we are doing, also we need also the public to know what we are doing. And these technologies should not be judged only by whether they can work, but we must also ask whether the evidence is sufficient, whether the decision-making process is legitimate, and whether the trials or the research advances the public interest, because we do not want to do research or do a lot of work and does not help the public. So responsible reporting, therefore, connects the science question, that is, what do we know, with the governance question, who decides, and the equity question, who benefits and who carries the risk. In terms of governance, that is, strong governance begins with clarity. That is the proof of concept stage, and journalists should avoid saying that technology has been approved without explaining what was approved, because sometimes a proof of concept is approval for a proof of concept is granted, but that doesn't mean that that project has been approved for the public. So journalists should ask questions: what was approved? Was it at laboratory research? Was it a confined field trials? Or was it a limited field trial? Or even was it a wider deployment? So about public participation, and it is so important and very important that public engagement is taken into consideration as we design our research or even carrying out the research. And why is it important? Is because biosafety decisions affect people, it affects livelihoods, and the environment as well. So scientific risk assessment remains very essential. But as well, the communities contribute knowledge and even the local ecology and even the land use and even the issues of public health. And therefore, they may not be very visible in the technical documents that have been submitted, but in practical, they are very important. So engagement with the public also strengthens legitimacy. People are more likely to trust a process than they receive understandable information. So at this point, the public can ask questions. We hear different viewpoints and see how their concerns are considered, even when we are making decisions. So meaningful engagement is more than issuing just a notice or holding just a single meeting. It should begin early enough to influence the decision. It should also provide timely and accurate information, and that is not confidential information. Public engagement as well should use appropriate language. This is the languages that the communities can understand easily and also relate to. So in the context of Kenya, public participation and public engagement is a national value that is in the constitution of. And also the regulations on GMO, environmental release regulations, requires that the authority carries out public participation and make non-confidential application information available to the public. So for the journalists or the communicators, they should assess the quality, not merely the existence of engagement. They should ask who was informed, in what language and format was communicated, when did engagement begin, were barriers to participation addressed, what concerns were raised, where is the record showing how those concerns affected the decisions. So those are some of the things when carrying out public participation and public engagement.
Really, you have 1 minute? You have 1
Yes.
minute, Korir.
Thank you. So in terms of accountability, the accountability requires clarity about who is responsible for the trial and its consequences. So for researchers, they need to disclose the institutional roles, who is funding, the potential conflict of interest, safeguards, and the regulator should explain the basis for their decision in language that the public understand. And safety assessment should consider possible effects on human and animal health, biodiversity, ecosystems, and target organisms. So in terms of confidentiality, the field trials may collect household locations, disease incidents, health information, and even surveillance data. So these may identify people, households, or communities. So communicators should ask what data are being collected, why are they necessary, and who may access or share them. And this provides the dignity and privacy of participants and must not be sacrificed for a more dramatic story. So in terms of inclusivity, we say that the risks and benefits of these trials may not be distributed equally. So communities hosting a trial may carry immediate environmental or social risk, while benefits may extend to a much larger population. So communication should use appropriate language formats and recognize differences in literacy culture, and access to technology. So I've just put there a few questions that can help the reporters or communicators to make up or to come up with a strong report that distinguishes among what is scientifically established, what remains uncertain, and what researchers hope to achieve. And finally, and in conclusion, just say that these technologies should be evaluated not only by whether they can work, but also by whether they are safe, ethical, inclusive, transparent, and responsive to the communities they are intended to serve. And responsible reporting does not mean promoting or opposing a technology. It just means asking the right questions, verifying the evidence, giving affected communities a voice, and keeping decisions anchored in safe human rights, accountability, and public interest. With that, I say thank you so much. Thank you for listening to me. Back to you, Korir.
Thank you, Korir. Thank you very much. We don't want to because we are behind the schedule. Let me just go to the next presenter so that those questions can be answered. Please put the name of the person you are or the presenter you are addressing.
Dr. Maritim. Hello,
Yes.
Dr. Maritim. Good. Hello, this is Kofi, your co-moderator.
Okay, Kofi.
You have been doing a good job.
Thank you for
I've been
coming
listening
in.
to you, so I'm here. If you
Thank
want
you.
to
So
come
you
in
can take over
anytime,
from
let me
there,
know.
please.
Okay.
Yes, please take over from here.
Right. So thank you very much. So we want to believe that so far we have had very insightful presentations, and we are putting our comments and questions together. When we are done with the presentations, we will allow you to come in with all the comments or questions that you have. So without much ado, we'll invite the next presenter. The next presenter, I want to believe, is Lina.
Lina Finda. Lina
Yes.
Finda, Dr. Lina Finda.
Yes. So yes, Dr. Lina Finda. Dr. Lina Finda is a public health researcher at Ifakara Health Institute and a co-founder and managing director of African Conservations, an African-led initiative focused on ensuring emerging health technologies are ethical, locally relevant, and responsive to community needs. So Dr. Lina holds an MPH, MBA, and a PhD in public health with research expertise in malaria transmission, human-mosquito interactions, and innovative malaria control. She also leads stakeholder engagement on emerging biocontrol technologies, including gene-drive mosquitoes, working with researchers, policymakers, regulators, communicators, and communities across Africa. So we'll now invite Dr. Lina to share with us in 10 minutes your presentation. Thank you very much. Yes, it's clear, but you can put it in presentation mode if you are ready, then we can take it from there. Thank you.
All right. It is on my side. That's good?
Perfect. Please,
Great.
you can.
Thank you. I've been asked to present on how communities shape the future of new malaria control technologies, especially the biocontrol technologies. So just to give especially biocontrol technologies for malaria control, sorry. Just to give a brief context, malaria is a public health threat and a major problem across Africa, with more than 200 million cases and 600,000 deaths annually, most of which are in Africa, and most of the deaths are among young children under 5. This is just a graph to show where we are right now and where we should have been if everything worked as it should. So the green line shows where we should have been. The left side is the cases and the right side is deaths. So if everything worked well, we should have had very few cases and few deaths as of now. But the reality is the blue line, which shows still the cases and deaths are quite high compared to the efforts that are going to the disease control due to a number of challenges that are shown here. I won't go into detail on them. But what all of these are showing us is a lot of effort is going into malaria control, but the outcomes are not what is expected. And what this tells us is that we do need additional efforts to get back on the green line. And biocontrol technologies are just one of those potential alternative strategies. These are not to replace what we currently have, but to add on to the effort. And there are a number of these biocontrol technologies. Dr. Etienne just presented on Wolbachia, but there is sterile insect technique, gene drives, and other genetic modifications. And so just going back to the question that I've been asked to talk on whether communities can influence the future, but I wanted to first of all look into what actually determines the future of a technology. One is that the technology itself has to sell. It has to be safe, effective, applicable to our situation, adaptable. And then we need systems. Dr. Eric also talked about that, the governance, regulation, oversight, monitoring, surveillance. We have to have those systems to make sure that these technologies can be regulated or governed within the country. And then we also need capacity in all of those cases. And the other component of this equation that I have specifically been working on is the people side, making sure that they're aware, they understand their needs and situations are represented, and also that they have decision-making power on what happened. So, and what African Conversations does, I'll speak from my experience on this, is to gather insights and recommendations of various African stakeholders on the potential of such technologies for malaria control and elimination. We have been doing our work in phases. We started in 2020, and then in each phase, we normally focus on one approach. The current phase is focusing on establishing effective systems for knowledge sharing between different stakeholders. And these are some of the stakeholder groups that we're working with. So making sure that each stakeholder group understands what the other group is doing, or what decisions are made across these groups, to make sure that eventually we are sort of all on the same line. So back on what power people or communities or stakeholders have on the future of biocontrol technologies. So one is that before we can even get onto that, we need to say what decisions are normally made or how decisions are made by stakeholders. So in this case, I said stakeholders make their decisions based on evidence. Whether or not a technology has a potential in a country depends on what evidence exists and how people are satisfied with that. Does the technology work? Is it safe? Does it fit the context of a specific country? Is it worth it? This question is asked a lot. Can we achieve the same outcomes with what we currently have? Or is this absolutely necessary? And can we afford it and sustain it? So all of these questions would eventually open a door to a responsible position on what future that technology has. And in this case now, genuine engagement is needed to inform the stakeholders of all of that, answering all of those concerns or questions. And then that now leads to a decision on what happens to a particular technology, whether it is accepted or delayed or accepted under certain conditions or rejected. And all of this, again, as I said, depends on how well the stakeholders are satisfied with the evidence provided. Today's webinar is on communication. Sorry. and how communication should be used to influence or to encourage informed decision making. So in this case, I just wanted to add on here that good communication requires understanding where people are. And the previous presenter also talked about this, that the context is really important, making sure that we understand what people know, what challenges they face, what are their lived experiences. And then based on that, now we can form engagement strategies on how technologies, the biocontrol technologies can change their lives for better. As I said before, that it is necessary to start with frame of reference of the stakeholders that we are talking to, what they know, value, or experience, and then using that context to develop messages or delivery strategies. Again, in terms of engagement, this is a lesson that we learned from our own African Conversations efforts, that not each stakeholder requires the same depth of information. Scientists, for example, might require detailed when you go to the community, you don't necessarily need so many details. And then you can say how well it works for them without adding too many scientific details. Maybe their concerns would be, at least in our cases, their concerns from the communities were, for example, does it work? Is it safe? What do I have to do? Or what changes for me? For farmers or fishermen, they were concerned about what happens to their fish or their livelihoods. And just like that, each stakeholder group normally has something that is very crucial or a priority to them. So understanding such context definitely helps on determining how you communicate, what you say to them and how you say that. And then, so my talk was on community, how communities changes or shapes the future. But then when I thought about it, what is a community exactly? I think we do make a lot of mistakes when we normally say community is just a single group, and that, or maybe we normally put it as one stakeholder group among other stakeholders, and maybe that is not quite correct, and there is a need to actually segment the communities into different subgroups within that. And you can see that they all have different roles, different experiences and interests. For example, what is of a priority to a mother with young children may not necessarily be the same priority that a fisherman might have, or a political leader or a traditional leader. So understanding each of these different contexts is quite important in framing how the technology will address their unique needs. This was just to show the different stakeholder groups within the communities. And this is an example of how we sort of learned the hard way, how different groups might react differently to different messages. In Nigeria, for example, when we were informing the community leaders about malaria cases and deaths in the country, as you know, Nigeria carries the highest burden. The community leaders almost threw us out. They were quite angry, thinking that we were actually making those numbers up. They said if there were that many deaths out of malaria in Nigeria, they challenged us in showing them where these people were buried or why weren't the hospitals flooded with people. So based on their own lived experiences in this particular community, they didn't believe the statistics. The statistics didn't make any sense to them. So in this case, we learned that we actually needed to learn what were their lived experiences, what did they value, what did they see, and then worked from that to communicate the burden of malaria. In Tanzania, same, we spoke with the youth on how they viewed malaria as a problem, and to them it wasn't at all a problem. They saw it as an ever-present hassle, It's a disease that they said, yes, they get it, but they didn't get too sick. There wasn't any stigma attached to it. You could get treated easily. So to them, it wasn't such a big problem, despite the fact that they lived in a very highly endemic area. But of course, they were removed from the realities that maybe mothers of young children would face, who are the most vulnerable groups in the community. So from this, we sort of learned that it was important to understand the context and then frame communication or engagement strategies based on those. And then based on this as well, when we were talking about the technologies in Southern Tanzania, we also learning from our previous mistakes, we started asking communities to explain to us how they understand these concepts of genetic modification. And then we used their own frame of understanding to start framing our own descriptions of the technologies.
You have 1 minute, I think 1 minute.
Yes, I am finishing. So just to close up, I wanted to say that listening is a 50% part of communication. Listening is very important, understanding what stakeholders, actually this is just here, understanding what their experiences are and their knowledge is, and then building your own communication or engagement strategies from that. There is no single communities. We need to segment communities, start with context, and then explain the technology after you understand the context. And yeah, the engagement, as I said, should be a two-way system and not just talking to the people, but listening is great. And then also the end goal of engagement should be to get informed decisions and not necessarily force acceptance. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Lina. So far we've had very good presentations. We had Etienne covering scientific evidence and vector control comparisons. We had Eric talked about governance, privacy, and also public interest safeguards. Alex started it, and he covers editorial verification and responsible storytelling. Then we just heard Nina talking about the community experience, local context, civil society, and also social impact. So now we will allow some questions, and we know that our panelists are ready to provide the responses. So if we are ready, already we have some questions in our chat that we'll read them. But if anybody is ready to start with the questioning, please, we are ready for that. Thank you.
Okay, can I start? I think I have two questions.
Please go ahead, Alex.
Yes, I have two questions. I have one that I have noted here in the chat. This one is from Joy Kabaka, and she asked that what does meaningful community involvement look like in practice? And what role can journalism play in creating spaces, in creating that space? Actually, that one I actually was able to reply to it in the chat. It's a good question, and we need to, when we talk about involving communities in reporting about these new technologies, we need to go back to address the issue of equity and fairness in our reporting by clearly identifying the key questions of who benefits, who bears the risks, and who may be excluded. For example, if you are reporting about the story of gender-derived mosquitoes, whatever, everywhere, you need to include voices. Typically, that story will always come with voices of either the politicians, and by chance, you will find a scientist or two. You will find the politicians driving the narrative. So what can we do to meaningfully involve the communities? Number one, we need to see reporting that compounds the issues. Who are the beneficiaries? Who are the risk bearers and the overlooked groups? Can you interview at least one credible source from each relevant group and ask whether access costs, issues like impact, are really well distributed? You need to rehabilitate, to rethink your sourcing structure,
Hello,
to make
Alex.
sure that you mark the key stakeholders.
Alex, sorry for coming through. Please, we need to be very snappy with our questions and responses so that we are constrained with time, so that we can make time. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, there was another question about this one. I got it on WhatsApp. It's about checking claims and ensuring communication. How can journalists be motivated? I think we need to make fact-checking a key bit in the newsroom. Also take fact-checking initiatives to the audiences. Find the audiences where they are. For example, most of the fake news comes from some of these platforms, including TikTok. Are we there? Are we there? Are we there giving the right information? Thank you very much.
Many thanks. Thank you very much. Can we have the next question, please?
Yes. Hello? Hello?
Etienne, please, you can go. I have a couple of questions.
Yes, I have, I think 3 questions. The first one is from Bridget. She's asking about the progress of Oxitec in Djibouti and also the work in Kenya, and if there is other project on Wolbachia in Africa, the level of implementation. So I want to say in Djibouti, the program of Oxitec is on GM, genetically modified mosquitoes, on Anopheles stephensi so far. So it's 2 technology which are pretty much completely different, because for Oxitec, they are making genetic modification, and with Wolbachia, this is naturally occurring bacteria. So this is 2 separate concepts that we need to make the separation carefully. But in Djibouti, they are really progressing. And I think in the coming month, they are planning to do operational field release and also study the epidemiological impact of the GM mosquitoes there. In Kenya, I'm not sure. I don't want to say something wrong, but I'm not sure from my knowledge that there is any published data on the Wolbachia for releasing to control dengue or malaria. Not yet. I think most of the study are still laboratory studies. And in Africa, unfortunately, I didn't get time to present the status of Wolbachia work in Africa. In Burkina, we are really progressing. We have pretty much a good program where we are planning. The plan was to go for the first Wolbachia release in Africa, but we are still progressing. Even we are facing some challenges based on really what this webinar is really important, because what we are really facing is issues of communication, how to communicate science to different stakeholders. And but so far, I think we don't have a lot of studies on Wolbachia in the continent. Most of the studies are in the lab. But as I was showing in Asia, in Southeast Asia, like Malaysia, Indonesia, and also in South America, like Brazil and other countries, they are really using Wolbachia operationally to control dengue and other arboviruses. So the second question is, yes.
Yes, there was another question in the chat. I guess let me
Okay.
read it for you. Then it said, when you see a claim such as, since genetically modified mosquito research was
Yep.
shut down in Burkina Faso, we haven't heard much about dengue fever as we used to. As a scientist, how do you help a journalist deal with such a false claim?
Yes, yes, Prof. Kofi, this is the third question that I have written here. This is really important question from Dr. Musa Sawadogo. I think this is a very important question, really relevant, and to me, we need to communicate a lot. We need to make the separation between the correlation of something and also the cause. For example, we faced this situation in Burkina in 2023 because we were working with a different program of gene drive mosquitoes or other strategy like Wolbachia, and people are thinking that it's because of what we are doing that they have seeing this outbreak of dengue or malaria. But since most of the program are stopped now, but we are still seeing dengue, we are still seeing malaria dying, killing people, and even the cases of dengue now are really, dengue is becoming not like a neglected disease in the past in Burkina, but now dengue is really an emergent vector-borne disease. We are seeing a lot of cases every day. Even myself, even my family, we are seeing, but we are not releasing any mosquitoes so far. So I think what we need to do when we are communicating, and if I have to talk to a journalist, what we have to do is to look at scientifically the data, the epidemiological data, and also the entomological data. Is that any relation with what people are doing on the ground? I think this is something important that we need really to have as discussion instead of making the discussion based on. You need to do the discussion based on data, on scientific data, or not in terms of hypothesis, something like that. I think
Thank you very much. Thank you very
I
much.
think
So,
the last question is Joy Kabaka. Uh, the question is, okay, Wolbachia is working. How can we communicate with journalists, with people? I think what we really miss in the past is not to engage the journalists and also the other stakeholders at the beginning of our science. Even now, we are in the lab, we need to start the discussion with them early, as soon as possible. We are engaging people. We don't need to wait when we are ready to go to deployment to start to discuss with them. I think we need to start the discussion even where we are in our lab, trying to troubleshoot, trying to find a different formulation, how to deploy. We need to start the discussion early with them with a lot of transparency, but also we need to continue the discussion with the journalists, with the other component of the stakeholders. We need to have these continuous discussions with them throughout our research project, but we don't need to wait when we are ready to do to deployment and start to do the discussion. I think this is something that we learn from our own experience, that we need to start discussion really early and in full transparency, but also how to lay down the language, how to lay down our science, how to explain easily the different concepts to the general public. I think this is something that we are really aware, and for the future, we will start this kind of discussion even when we are in the lab with the different components of the society. Thank you.
Etienne, you have been very passionate in answering the questions, and in fact, it was very well answered. Thank you so much, Doc. Thank you very much.
Thank
To
you.
Lina, yes, I know you have tried to provide a response on the chat, but for the benefit of those who have not read what request.
Is it me or is it not audible?
Finda, can hear you. Proceed. You were saying you respond.
I respond. Okay, I saw two comments, and one was from Musa on what to do with uncertainties. And what I said is that every technology that comes with uncertainty. Even the current tools that are used in malaria control have their own pros and cons. So the important thing is to acknowledge such and explain how they are being addressed, or if there is any evidence to account for those. So in terms of biocontrol tools, while they are very new, especially gene drives, for which I'm focusing a lot of my engagement, there isn't so much evidence that we can say we learned from another country that has tried exactly similar technology. But what we can say is that yes, we acknowledge that there are a lot of unanswered questions yet, a lot of uncertainties, but to explain what is being done to address those, and when answers, because these technologies are being researched, are being developed, are being improved, and as we get more answers towards a lot of those uncertainties, to make sure that those are communicated back to communities and stakeholders. So that would, to me, that would be the way to deal with uncertainties, to be transparent, but also accountable on how they're being addressed. And then there was a question on what role journalists can play in ensuring that the community's perspectives don't just get collected during emergent exercises. So this is a really good question, and I was actually typing my answer here. Journalists have such an important role in this case, and just taking from what we learned again, these I'm telling voices of media personnel that we engaged with. Their recommendation in this case was to start and reintroduce the world to malaria. Technology developers or our policymakers or our regulators do not live in malaria endemic areas. They are so removed from that. And sometimes when these decisions are made, they do not really represent the experiences or the context that those who suffer from malaria actually experience. So what a recommendation came, which I fully agree with, was that what the journalists can do is they can take people back to those experiences, go to those settings where malaria transmission happens, talk to the mothers who lose their children to malaria, talk to people, fishermen, farmers who deal with these diseases every day and challenges they face, bring those experiences back to the world, show everyone who has to make a decision on what happens, make them see that reality. And in this case, then you can make sure that the voices of those that are actually suffering from these diseases, whether they actually like this technology or not, or what they think it works for them, making sure that those voices are heard early on. Because otherwise, decisions might be made without really understanding what is happening on the ground. So who better can actually bring out that than journalists? So I think starting now by reintroducing the world back to malaria and what it actually is and what people live, how people live with it, I think that is really important in making sure that engagement is not done just to get people to accept it, but that it actually it's informed, but it's informed by the context that these technologies are going into.
All right, very well. Thank you very much, Lina. I will hand over to Dr. Maritim, if you want to come in with any comments. Thank you.
Thank you, presenters. Thank you, all of us. I'm not sure whether there is any other question left. However, we cannot proceed without giving our panelists just to give one comment on their principle of what they are presented. One comment from each panelist. We've had 4 panelists, starting with Alex.
Sorry,
Unless, oh,
thank you.
okay.
I'm here. We must.
We can call it a parting shot, Alex. Eh? We can call it a
Yeah,
parting
yeah.
shot. Oh, yes.
Parting shot. We must verify. We must go back to the basics. Journalists, we must go back to the basics and learn how to verify before publishing. Also, AI is here with us. We cannot wish it away. We must use it responsibly. Otherwise, thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, Alex. We have Etienne Bilgo.
Yes. So what I want to, hello, can you hear me? What I want to say, we didn't have a lot of time to present Wolbachia, but I'm totally available. Feel free for anyone who wants to have more discussion with me. We are really, really keen to discuss, to present the technology. And what we want really to do is to work hand by hand with the different components, which can really help us to develop this technology. And this, we are totally sure that this is a really important technology that can really help us to save life. And I want to say thank you to you, thank you to Willie and the entire team. Thank you for the different panelists. Thank you very much.
Etienne, maybe you can just add one in terms of reporting here, for the sake of our reporters who are here. What do you want to tell them?
Yes, yes, I want to say in terms of Wolbachia is really a technology that really needs early communication, transparency, but also continuous discussions with different stakeholders. And we need really to change the paradigm. Instead of being in the lab doing our good science and having the community, the policymakers, all of people who are making the decision in another part, we need to start everything together. Early communication, transparency, and also continuous discussions with the different stakeholders. Thank you.
Eric, you are parting shot for the reporters.
Thank you so much, and thank you, the organizers, for this webinar. My parting shot to the communicators is that you have the responsibility to translate complex information without really creating unnecessary fear or overstating benefits or even concealing uncertainties. Thank you.
Thank you, Korir. Lina Finda.
Lina, yeah, I think my last words are just to make sure that the voices of the vulnerable groups are represented in any decisions that are made. Yeah.
Thank you, Finda. Thank you. Thank you so much, team, for all your contribution to this important discussion. I know the discussion is still ongoing. We usually say in communication, we don't finish until we say it finish. We don't finish until we achieve our goal, and communication is continuous. And at this point, I'd like to welcome Rosalia to take over from here.
All right, thank you very much to our panelists and our presenters. We can give them an emoji in the chat. Thank you very much to Dr. Maritim and Professor Kofi for leading us so well, and to our presenters and keynote speakers for giving us so much information We were talking about reporting the science, right? Covering emerging technologies responsibly, and from their presentations, we have been urged to verify the evidence and be confident about reporting the research stage, right? Be confident about reporting the stage of research that you're reporting on. The evidence might not be ready yet because the technology is still at an early stage. But our presenter, Etienne, told us that we need to involve journalists at an early stage, whether it's at the research stage. And he made a very, very clear distinction that Wolbachia is not GMO. It is found in the soil. There's a distinction between Wolbachia and GMO, and we'll be welcoming your feedback in a moment in the chat. Please fill in and tell us which are the other webinars that you would like, but I already see that this topic on Wolbachia needs much more time, so we will take note on that. He's told us that scientists need to involve journalists at an early stage, be it in the laboratory or whether they are the field trials, so that journalists are able to report correctly at each stage. So that is the gap. What is promised on this technology? We need evidence at the end of it. So the new technologies are often promoted well before their effectiveness, limitations, or even long-term consequences. So at the end, what do the journalists demonstrate? There has to be a distinction. And that will come out clearly when journalists and scientists, walk this journey. The scientists should be able to welcome the journalists to walk the journey of the technologies with them. So we began by looking at what we wanted to do. We wanted to be better able to report on emerging technologies accurately, right? And the keynote presenter spoke about the hype. Okay, there's hype in technologies, but also on the other side there is the fear of technology. So what lies in the middle is the evidence, the truth. Responsible technology journalism is not anti-technology or pro-technology, but it is pro-evidence. Okay, so we need to distinguish evidence-based science reporting from speculation. And that leads us to what is the evidence? As we report, as we cover emerging technologies responsibly, we need to ask, what is the evidence? What is uncertain? What's still in the lab? What can be reported right now? Who's speaking about it? Who's doing the research? Who benefits? And who can be harmed in the process of doing this research? So we are moving beyond this technology is revolutionary to now giving the evidence. That is what covering emerging technologies responsibly involves. We also need to be able to use AI. Our keynote presenter talked about the various uses of AI to gather news, to gather the news stories around the various technologies. So we need to be able to look at the various phases. In order to help us leave the hype, we need to ask the right questions. Ask the right questions as we continue with reporting. Covering emerging technologies responsibly involves moving the hype and asking the right questions. We also need to apply the ethical lens. We have heard from our presenter, Eric, from the National Biosafety Authority. There are questions that must be asked as before the National Biosafety Authority approves. How is compliance being monitored? What containment measures were recommended? And what did the National Biosafety Authority approve finally? So the ethical lens must be applied. We have to center human rights. We have to look at privacy, look at safety, inclusion, and evaluate potential harm. That's why the regulator will be asking such questions before any approvals are done. Then the context is very key. You need to ask the usual questions, even as you interview experts. Look at the past technologies, seek perspective from independent experts and policymakers. And then communicating uncertainty. Lina Finda has talked about involving the communities as you communicate, right? About involving communities and helping them to understand from their various perspectives in the simplest ways, so that you do not ambush them with a technology, but explain what is known to what is unknown in simple terms, so that the community can understand what is happening without creating any confusion. So eventually, the technology shapes decisions, and therefore reporting influences how people will respond to technology. And this involves mass media, the communities. It will influence how people will respond to technology. And when we report right, when we get it right from the word go, we will avoid cases of miscommunication. We will not give a chance to the purveyors of miscommunication. So those were the intended outcomes of the webinar, to be able to enable us to understand, to communicate uncertainty without creating confusion, and also use of AI tools without compromising journalism. And that was the key thing that our keynote speaker addressed. So the journalist's role is to move beyond the technology's revolutionary, to ask the question, where is the evidence? What is still uncertain? Who says so? Who could be harmed? And what does the public need to know before believing the claim? And that's why this conversation was so important to us. Truth under the microscope, reporting the science right, and covering emerging technologies responsibly. We really hope that you have learned quite a lot, and the conversation continues. In the chat, you will find a link so that you're able to give us your feedback. Kindly give us your feedback in the link. And when you write your feedback, kindly use the name that you would like to appear on the certificate, so that we can process those. And this webinar was produced by the Biotrust Institute, the African Genetic Biocontrol Consortium, and the Elizabeth R. Griffin Foundation at the Johns Hopkins University, and who are our esteemed partners. And we hope that you will join us in the next webinar, which will happen next week, Thursday, same time. But in the meantime, we, as the African Genetic Biocontrol Consortium, are planning for a Congress at the end in March 2027. The call for abstract is almost coming to a close. So check the link also shared here, and remember to submit your abstract for the convention. Also remember to subscribe to our newsletter. So on behalf of the entire team, on behalf of the team at the African Genetic Biocontrol Consortium that have been working behind the scenes to bring to you this webinar, on behalf of our presenters, our keynote speaker, and our panelists, Mr. Atuhaire, Dr. Etienne Bilgo, Mr. Eric Korir from the National Biosafety Authority, Dr. Lina Finda, research scientist and community impact expert, and our moderators, Professor Kofi Boni and Dr. Florida Maritim, and also on behalf of the founder of the African Genetic Biocontrol Consortium, Dr. Willie Tunui, and the entire team at the Secretariat, would like to say thank you very much for your participation. My name is Rosalia Omungo, and we look forward to seeing you in the next webinar next week. Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening from wherever you tuned.
Bye-bye.
Thank you and
Bye-bye.
bye. Bye-bye.
Thank you and
Bye-bye.
bye.